Hello and welcome to Ask Ron with me, Ron, your host. Got some good questions from the MD forum. Also got a new shower curtain. I hope you enjoy it. First one comes from Albertos. Alberto says, your thoughts on Y3T training from Neil Hill. I'm using a modified version of it. My joints are much better and it adds variety. Really important if you train many years like me. Are you familiar with it? Definitely I'm familiar with it. I know Neil a little bit. Neil actually had a column in MD for a time. As you know, Neil has always been the coach of Flex Lewis. Very smart guy, Welsh, like, half of me. So, that always carries a little bit more weight. But I'll give you a real quick overview of it. Obviously, if you want to know in depth, Google Y3T, and you can find articles and breakdowns and charts and all that good stuff. But basically, it's a 3-week rotation. The first week is heavy compound movements and lower reps. That's in the 6 to 12 range. Week 2, you do a combination of compound and isolation movements, and now your reps are a little higher. They're in the 14 to 20 range. Week 3, it's lighter weights and high reps, and intensity techniques are employed, things like drop sets and supersets, because now your range is going from 20 to 80%. So obviously, if you're doing 80 reps in a set, that's probably like a giant set or something. So there are also other systems out there that basically follow a similar pattern where they're alternating or varying loads, rep ranges, and intensity techniques. Eric Brozier, who wrote for Flex, he's got something called PR/R. Anyway, it's something very similar. There's been things like this for a while, just variations on a theme. And I think they're all good because you don't want to train super heavy all the time, and you don't want to use low reps all the time. You don't want to train light all the time and do high reps. Your intensity, you shouldn't be doing all straight sets. You shouldn't be doing all drop sets, supersets, things like that. You should vary your training for your joints, obviously. And as Alberto points out, for us older guys who've been training for, in my case, it's coming up on 35 years. Good Lord. So that's a long time to be beating up your shoulders, your lower back, your elbows, your knees, your ankles, your wrists. These all take a beating over the years, trust me. So, anything that's going to give you a little break from that while still keeping the intensity high and keeping the muscle, putting that stress on the muscle so you can keep seeing muscle growth. It's a great thing. Some people are able to vary that all within the same workout, but I still think that's probably not the best way to do it. I don't think you should be going heavy and low reps every workout, even if you're mixing it up with lighter weights and higher reps, because that means still every time you're training a body part once or twice a week, most people train a body part once every 5 days or even twice a week at this point. A lot of guys do. That's a lot of opportunities for that, the connective tissues, the joints and the tendons and the ligaments to be subjected to heavy, heavy loads. And I don't think it's a wise idea to do that on a continuous basis. Sooner or later, something's got to give. Eventually, you'll get tendinitis. You might tear a muscle. You'll develop arthritis. These are things that all you guys my age are very familiar with. Most of you my age have torn muscles. You probably have arthritis like me. Rotator cuff tears, lower back problems. These are all issues that I think anybody that trains hard and heavy for a number of years is going to have to deal with eventually. So I think it's a good system, Y3T, not just for older guys, but for younger guys to hopefully avoid some of that damage. I do think some of that damage that I have and a lot of guys my age have could have been avoided. Had I varied my loads and intensity and not always gone. I spent most of my 20s and a lot of my 30s going very, very heavy. I would still do other sets in the 10 to 12 rep range, whatever, 10 to 15. Especially for legs, but there were also many, many sets, 3 to 5 rep range. And people say, well, do you think you'd still be as big if you hadn't done those? Maybe I'd be bigger. I don't know if this is as big as I could have gotten if I'd done things differently, maybe, and taken better care of my joints, had more respect for them, spent more time warming up, varied the loads and not gone heavy, taken some actual time off here and there too. Every few months, take a full week or two off from training with weights. Wow, what a concept. To me, that was like, no way, I'm not doing that. Looking back, I'm like, why didn't I do that? I should have done that. I highly recommend that for all of you out there. Is a couple times a year, you really should take a full week off, maybe even 2 weeks off from weights. You're going to lose your mind. I know you're going to think, oh, I'm shrinking and I don't know what to do with myself. Find stuff to do. I'm sure there are things you could get done with your career, your significant other, your family, school, work. There's plenty of stuff to do with that extra time. And, you could still be doing cardio. You could still be, keeping your heart healthy in that time. You just should give your joints and connective tissues a complete break from the weights. I do believe that. A couple times a year for a week, maybe 2 weeks. I really wish I had done that. I think I'd be in a lot better shape now. My joints would be. So very, very familiar with Y3T, though I've never followed it. Sorry to say. But I do think it's a great idea. So give it, he's already trying it when he's having success with it. I would definitely recommend people out there trying it. Next question. Series of questions from my man in the UK, Glen Hill 68. Okay, I told you I wouldn't shy away from any of these questions, and I won't. So these are some personal questions. After seeing on Anabolic Doc 9 that you have some calcium in your coronary arteries, hope nothing serious, do you think this was caused through taking steroids in your younger years? I don't think the steroids helped. I don't know the extent to which they contributed, and I know that my cardiologist, I have a cardiologist now just because you have to see, they're the only ones who will do these things for you. I had to have an appointment with a cardiologist just to have that scheduled, so this is going to be my cardiologist now, apparently. He wasn't concerned. He called me and said, it's nothing to be worried about. I want you to go do a stress test. I'm going to do that later this month. And he said, most likely we'll end up putting you on a low dose of statins, something like Crestor or Lipitor, which will prevent the advancement of the plaque in the arteries. I also ate a lot of red meat. Nowadays, I eat red meat maybe 2 or 3 times a week. There were many, many years where I ate red meat every day, once or twice a day, because I believed it was a great muscle-building food. I still do believe that. It's probably not the best thing for you in large quantities. If you're eating it frequently in large quantities, it's probably not the best thing for you. The late Mike Matarazzo, he really felt a lot of his heart troubles were, obviously he said, yeah, steroids for sure, if I hadn't done all those steroids. But he also said I shouldn't have eaten all that red meat. He was eating 2 or 3 pounds of red meat a day for years and years while he was, actively competing. So would the steroid, my steroid use, did that contribute? Probably. But who knows, how do you, there's no way to know for sure. Question 2, in light of this, and your desire to possibly compete again, does this make you think twice in doing so, as steroids will probably be required in the further damage they may do? I want to say this because I hope I'm not making it seem like you're forced to take steroids if you want to compete at a certain level, the national level. Nobody's forced to do anything. The thing is, if all the guys you're competing against are on steroids, growth hormone, insulin, IGF-1, Clen, thyroid, you'd sort of be at a disadvantage, don't you think, if you're not on all those? And I want to quantify that statement because I think if you have great genetics, you don't need much in the way of drugs. I know a lot of people out there say, oh, that's bullshit. Everybody, you need tons of drugs to look. Yeah, you do need, you certainly need a good amount of drugs to look the way these huge 250 to 290 pound bodybuilders look. No argument there. But put it this way, those guys are a rare, rare breed. They're very rare. They don't need tons and tons of drugs, and they don't need to be on every single possible type of drug. I don't believe they do. I've heard of guys who don't use GH, believe it or not. I've heard of guys who don't use any fat burners. There's guys who don't use diuretics at the end, believe it or not. So think about it this way. Let's say we're talking about runners. Usain Bolt. He's amazing, right? He's the fastest man in the world. He would still be faster than all of you watching this if he was running in some cheap-ass $10 sneakers from Walmart. He would still kick your asses and blow right past you on any track. There's no doubt, right? He's that good. You could wear, I don't know what the most expensive type of running shoe, advanced, that these guys in the Olympics. Let's say it's $1,000 pair of shoes or $10,000 pair of shoes. It's the most space-age, high-tech, advanced running shoe or cleat or whatever that's ever been made, and it boosts your performance 30% or something ridiculous like that. Let's just, I'm being, just making an example here. I could wear those. You could wear those. He could still wear the crappy shoes. He's still going to blow right past you and leave you in his dust. Similar thing to bodybuilding. If someone's got spectacular genetics for bodybuilding, both in terms of the actual bone structure, the muscle shape, bellies, and all that, and their response to drugs, which is very, very important, they don't need to be on a ton of drugs, and they don't need to be on every single chemical that is used in the bodybuilding world. But let's look at everybody else. There's that's a tiny percentage of competitors. The majority of competitors, they're pretty good, but they're not great. So that's when drugs can make a difference. When you have people with genetics that are like, they're better than average, but they're nothing spectacular. You can give one of these guys the kitchen sink, the dream cycle of everything that you could possibly want to use. Take everything's pharma grade, and you get pharma GH, pharma IGF-1, everything. You pack all that together versus another guy with similar level of genetics that are pretty good, but nothing awesome. And he's just on a few basics, and he's not on GH, he's not on... All else being equal, the guy on more drugs is probably going to win. He's going to look better. That's just how I feel about it. People can argue with me, and that's fine. We all have our opinions. That's sort of how I look at it, though. Genetics are always going to trump everything else. And once you get to the very, very highest levels, all the guys have pretty damn good genetics. If you're like top 3 at the Nationals or USA, it's safe to say you have spectacular genetics. You're not getting that far. You're not getting past 20, 30, 40 other guys from around the country who have all won regional shows, and most of them have been top 5 or top 10 at the Nationals or in USA, anywhere from 1 to 10 times. You're not getting past those guys without some pretty damn good genetics. It's not always the guys with the absolute best genetics that win at that level. No. And that's even at the pro level, because, the guy who trains a little harder, gets some better condition, whatever, he can edge past these guys. But that's when you're talking about a bunch of genetic freaks together on one stage, and now you got to get a winner. Did I answer that? I guess if I competed again, am I going to think twice? Yeah, of course. I don't know if I'm going to compete again. Giles asked that in this question. When do you compete again? I don't know if I'm going to. Like I've said, while I have this job, and get ready for the wambulance, while I'm the online editor of this website and I'm the senior editor of the print magazine, it would be pretty ridiculous for me to try to go through a contest prep at the same time. I would do an injustice to one of those things or all of those things, trust me. Because when you're prepping for a show, you can't miss meals. Every meal has to be on time. It's got to be the exact right meal. You need your 8 ounces of chicken breast and half a cup of white rice and 4 sprigs of asparagus. You can't have a chicken sandwich from Wendy's instead. It's not the same thing. You have to have the right foods at the right times. You can't be missing a bunch of meals. You can't be missing fasted cardio. You got to do everything right. And especially if your genetics, like mine, are not the greatest, I have to be at 100% of my capabilities. And, to be honest, I probably would need at least a shoulder surgery at this point to be able to train properly again the way I used to train, which is, heavy, very heavy on chest and shoulder presses. I haven't been able to do that for a couple of years. I have arthritis, and I believe I have a torn rotator here. But, why am I going to go have a surgery just so I can, be a better bodybuilder and go compete again? For what? It's not on my priority list right now. Like I've said before, I had a good run. I competed from 1989 to 2013. Had an amazing time. Competed on the West Coast, the East Coast. Made a lot of friends. Had a lot of great experiences. Learned a lot about my body and about myself. I was always my own coach. Got myself into really great condition a few times. I'm proud of that. I still have the pictures, some videos. That's not to say that I won't ever compete again. I don't know. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. I don't know. It's just not a huge priority. Like I said before, my son is starting college in, this is April, so September. My son's starting up college. He's my last one. My daughter's going to be 24 this weekend. But he needs to be my priority. I need to still focus on putting him through college and all that. So, enough about me. After the first few shows of the year, have you seen anyone you think will seriously push Phil Heath this year? Nope. No, I have not. That's not to say a lot of these guys aren't great. Rolly, I think Rolly and Rami are going to push him this year. I don't think they're going to beat him. Neither one of them has the detail, the real clean separation, the detail that Phil has. That's where Phil really gets these guys. Rolly and Rami have as much mass or way more mass than Phil, obviously. I mean, Rolly's Rami's like 300 pounds. Rolly's in his best condition, he's about 255, I guess. I mean, they're all comparable, but where Phil wins, where Phil beats these guys is his conditioning. It's not just conditioning. Rami gets very lean. Rolly can get very lean, but they don't have that polished, real detailed, striated look. Phil's got like splinters and little crevices and cracks and just details that these guys don't have. That's where he beats them. It's refinement. It's polish. These are kind of nebulous terms to a lot of you because a lot of guys, they don't understand. Why isn't Rami Mr. Olympia? Why isn't Rolly Mr. Olympia? I don't get it. Why isn't William Bonac Mr. Olympia? I don't get it. It's not just the size, the shape, the condition. It's also the detail, the fine details, the muscle maturity. That gives a different look to the muscles. So if all else is equal, if all these guys have the same amount of muscle and similar degree of really nice, pretty aesthetic shape, muscle fullness and roundness, they have all that, but one of them has an extra level, something else that the other ones don't have. And that's what Phil has. He has something that these guys don't have. That's why he's been winning. That's why I don't see anybody threatening him this year. So we'll see what happens, right? He will probably tie the record. Unless somebody comes along and unless like Rami and Rolly really get that polished look somehow, I don't see anybody stopping him on the way to 10 unless Phil gets hurt or something. What are your favorite bodybuilding books? I can remember being inspired by Beef It, Hardcore Bodybuilding, Totally Awesome, and Unleashing the Wild Physique. So that was by Vince Aranda. I would say the first two books I read were in September 1987. I had just started college. I was at the University of California, Santa Barbara, and I had gotten a copy of Flex magazine in the mail because I had bought some Weider protein weight mass shape gainer, some crappy old supplement they used to make. And, you could fill out a little thing on the side and send it in, and they would send you a free issue of Flex. So I forgot all about it, but my mother forwarded it to me. So I'm there in California. I think I had just moved in. It was the second or third day I was there, and the mail came, and I opened up that issue and saw all these guys. I was like, oh, wow, I got to look like that. So I ran to the student bookstore, and it might have been before I even went and got all the books I needed for my classes. I think I went and looked at the bodybuilding, or I looked to see if there were any bodybuilding books I could get. And I bought two of them, and I read one first. They were both by Arthur Jones and Dr. Ellington Darden. One was the Nautilus bodybuilding book, and one was the Nautilus advanced bodybuilding book. So I was in a rush. I wanted to read the advanced one first, which I did. And I bought it because of the cover. Boyer Coe was on the cover. Remember Boyer Coe? He had these awesome arms. Boyercoe. Look him up on Google Images. Guy had some crazy arms. He was doing a Nautilus preacher curl on the cover, and he had these like double peaks, split biceps, and these big sweeping triceps. And I was like, whoa. So I read that and followed the routines in it. The Nautilus bodybuilding book wasn't, that book was shorter. It was mostly pictures, Chris Lunge pictures, which were great. And it had routines for every body part, specialization routines. That's how dopey I was. I'd been doing basic lifting at home and in a boys club back home in Waltham, Mass for a few years. Hadn't done anything for legs, hadn't touched legs, hadn't done anything for back. It was just basically bench presses, curls. I think if I was feeling really ambitious some days, I'd take the bar and do some presses overhead. And if there was anywhere to do chins, every once in a great while I'd do some chins. I did a lot of sit-ups. But it was far from a bodybuilding routine. The Nautilus bodybuilding book was by Arthur Jones, and it was very educational. It broke down things like genetics, muscle belly lengths. It talked a lot about recovery, about how to proper stimulation, intensity, how to stimulate a muscle to the maximum. Then you leave it alone and rest, and you need sleep, and you need to give it time off training, and you need to eat a lot of good food. It was just very basic stuff that I had no inkling about. And it didn't really settle in all of it for a while, but I mean, it was a good introduction to the basics that I needed. I also remember a buddy of mine who had moved out there to LA. He had a book that I was always sneaking peeks at called The Scientific Bodybuilding by Dr. Fred Hatfield, which was similar. It was an overview, different chapters about little thing, everything, basically what you needed to know to start getting good results, how to put a good routine together. I don't think I ever saw Arnold's Encyclopedia till years later. I did read Education of a Bodybuilder by Arnold a few years later. I loved that book. But and the Kennedy books, I remember seeing them and flipping through them, and I liked all the pictures. I don't recall ever actually reading one because I would have to buy it. I was buying magazines more so than books at that point. But yeah, those were all good books. I enjoyed them all. It's kind of sad because those days are gone. There's no more bodybuilding books. I'm bummed because I wrote a book called Real Bodybuilding. You can still find it on Amazon or anywhere that they, it was a paperback. I self-published it, Real Bodybuilding. And, I remember Kennedy talked one time about when he would come out with a book, that they would sell so fast and people would just snap them up, thousands and thousands and thousands of copies within a couple months. And every book he wrote and published had phenomenal success because there was nothing but books and magazines back then. And the magazines, you didn't have everything packaged together in there like you do in a book. So books did very well back then. And now books don't do well for the most part. There's some ebooks that have done okay, but people want to watch videos, and there's so much free information right here on your little phone or on the computer, like I'm talking into right now. I understand why people don't go out to bookstores and buy books anymore, or whatever, order them online, because there's so much information free now. It's a lot of the information is not really that useful, or everybody presents themselves as an expert online now. It's easy to do. You just say, I'm an expert, and I'm a training expert, and here's what I say you should do. And a lot of people will say, okay, that sounds good to me. But yeah, books, it's hard to sell books these days, trust me. I sold all the ones I printed, and I was good with that. But you can still order more. Real Bodybuilding, Amazon.com, by Ron Harris. Okay, let's talk about the important stuff. George UK, The Walking Dead. Verdict on series so far. Prediction for the end of this series. Okay, I'm done talking about bodybuilding, so if that's all you want to watch, you can stop watching. Walking Dead. This has been the war season, basically the war between Negan's group, the Saviors, and the combination, the allied forces of Rick's group in Virginia, or what's it called, Woodbury? No, not Woodbury. Rick's group, the Hilltop, and the Kingdom. So it's been just a lot of battles and things like that, and I love the show. I've heard a lot of people say it's terrible now. I don't watch it. I still think the show is really good. I like all the battles. I hate the Saviors. I love watching them get slaughtered. I cried when Carl died. I got really bummed because Carl's the same age as my son, and it was a bummer to see Carl go. But Negan, I hated him a lot, and I wanted him to die. And now I don't know. I don't know if I want him to die. I know in the comic he's still alive. Rick doesn't kill him. I really doubt that he's going to die in the series. He's too likable and too complex a character. The Governor wasn't so much. The Governor, if for those of you who recall, he was just a bad guy. There were no redeeming qualities. Negan seems to have a little bit of a caring side, a bit of a human side to him, where the Governor was just long gone. He had passed that point of no return. I'm not saying Negan's ever going to be a good guy. No way. But like in the comic, I know he's still alive and he's like jailed. Rick keeps him in jail and like keeps him on as a consultant or something. But I don't know. I'm torn. If he dies, I'll be cool with that because he did a lot of horrible things and he was basically enslaved that entire region of the U.S. in the post zombie apocalypse. That's what he was. He had these communities basically giving him half of all their resources just so he wouldn't murder them. So, whatever. But he said he was saving them. I don't know. I'm interested. I still, there's only 2 episodes left. Interesting to see what happens. I don't think anyone else from, Rick's side is going to die. We've already lost Carl. And I see that Morgan is going to be somehow moving on to Fear the Walking Dead, which I believe, because Fear the Walking Dead takes place a few years before what's currently going on in Walking Dead, that's probably where Morgan was when we didn't see him for a few seasons on Walking Dead. I don't know how he got from Georgia, where they all started out on Walking Dead, to California and Mexico, where they all are in Fear the Walking Dead. I'm sure it'll all be explained. Anyway, please subscribe to the MD YouTube channel. Also click the little bell symbol so that you will be notified when there's new videos coming up. Not just Ask Ron, but the Ronline Report, videos that Jordan does, training videos, all kinds of stuff that we'll be posting, especially, around contests. We put up a lot of content, as you know, previews, wrap-ups, interviews, all kinds of stuff, stage videos. So if you're subscribed and you're notified, you have that thing set to notify you, you won't miss anything. And why not go to Instagram and follow me at Ron Harris Muscle, at Ron Harris Muscle. That is all. I thank you all for watching. Appreciate all the questions. Keep them coming. Peace out, guys.